Good evening. My name is Dadisi Najib, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works, and Cerise Waiters is our clerk for this evening's hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet, so if you'd like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider two items. First, call to order. Are there any public comments? Members of the public were present, which may address any issues that are within the department's jurisdiction, but are not on today's agenda. Okay. Well, there are two orders today. Hearing order number 210700 to consider the removal of one landmark tree located in the front yard property of 2694 McAllister Street. The tree is dead, and Article 16 requires exceptions in the case of manifest danger and immediate necessity. Landmark trees on private property shall be removed only after the director's determination and issuance of a permit following a public hearing. And this last item is hearing order number 210702. This order supersedes order 210701 to consider the removal of 6 street trees with replacement adjacent to 400 through 500 Castro Street. Staff approved the removal and the public protested. So my job as the hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing items, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to our director, and the director will make the final determinations. Once the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided your contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows for these two cases. I'll ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. There's no time limit for this presentation. Then I will allow the property owner or appellant to speak, and then any members of the public or witness who wants to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You'll then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you are a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then use the Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you're dialing in on your phone, you'll dial star to indicate you're raising your hand. When it's your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If on your phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use virtual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. And if I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. Once all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. At this time, I'll open the hearing up to public comments. I think I already asked if there was anyone here who wanted to comment on something within our department's jurisdiction, but is not on today's agenda. And Cerise, no one raised their hand or anything, right? So if there's no comments for that item, I'm closing the item number 2, which is the public comments on the agenda. And then we're ready to hear the first item on today's agenda. May I have
The-
Public Works? Go ahead.
Excuse me, Miss Najib. There are
Yes.
two hands being raised. The
Oh,
very first hand I was speaking with in the chat, and I just want to reiterate to this person that these are for comments that are not related to today's case. So I will allow you to speak, but please, if you have anything to say, make sure that it's something that is not related to the cases today. We haven't gotten to those yet. Those will be in just a moment. Go ahead, you may speak. If you unmute yourself.
Hello, please let me know if you can hear me.
Yes, we
hear
can.
you.
Great. How long do I have? And I'll set my watch.
Is this for
Three-
things that are not on the agenda
Yes, we're
today?
not on the agenda. What is the time limit, please?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, hold on. Let me set my stopwatch. Hello, my name is Michael Petrellis, and I am a representative of a group called the Friends of Jane Warner Plaza, which is at 17th and Castro Streets. And this plaza is near many of your tree wells in the Castro district. And our organization feels that there has not been a good effort made to the users and stakeholders of Jane Warner Plaza about all of your meetings related to shrubbery and trees and really the urban forestry that is in the Castro. We don't know how you have reached out on the street level on Castro and Market Street, especially at Jane Warner Plaza and also Harvey Milk Plaza. These plazas are transit hubs. And we very much feel that if your bureau would post notices at these public spaces, the plazas, about whenever you're having hearings and appeals or anything to do with the urban forestry in the Castro district, we would really appreciate it. And I do not know if you reach out to the other groups, other stakeholder groups in the Castro. So I'd like to remind you, there's the Castro Community Benefit District. There is also the Castro Merchants Association. And there is the Eureka Valley Neighborhood Association. And I have looked at their social media in the past few months, and they have no notifications on their social media about receiving any outreach from you about urban forestry in what we call the neighborhood. So again, as a representative of the Friends of Jane Warner Plaza, we ask that
30
you look
seconds.
at new ways. We ask that you look at new ways to alert us to your meetings before they happen and to better engage with the Castro community. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Was there another person, Cerise, or did they put their hand down?
No, there are no others that are not related to the cases
Okay.
today. Oh, actually, one just popped up now. Just a moment. Go ahead. You could unmute yourself, please.
I appreciate what the previous speaker said. There is a planning department outreach list that exists, and many of those people on that outreach list belong to community groups within San Francisco. And that would probably be a better list than just talking about one neighborhood. I don't think it's appropriate to just target one neighborhood when the tree wells are a city issue, not a neighborhood issue. So for the sake of equity, which is more important, this is Michael Nolte speaking. I aware of Mr. Petrellis's work in the community, but at the same time, targeting one group of people over another is not equitable in San Francisco. I happen to be a native San Franciscan, and there are many neighborhoods that have tree wells. So using a larger list, which would be the Planning Commission's neighborhood outreach list, which if these groups that you mentioned, Michael, are not on, then get them on to get outreach about a lot of things, not just advocacy for public works. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Appreciate your comments. Are there any other? Folks who want to make comments about items not on tonight's agenda?
No other hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we're closing out our public comments for items not on tonight's agenda. So Public Works, are you ready to make your presentation in hearing order number 210700?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna pull up my screen. Bear with me for a moment. Let me try that again. While I'm pulling this up, I'll just say hello. My name is Chris Buck, Urban Forester with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And we'll pull up a PowerPoint that we can share to the screen here. Let's do that. Okay, here we go. And let's bring this to the beginning. Thanks for your patience. Sorry about that. Yes, regarding the first item, before we jump into the two specific agenda items for this evening's hearing, I'm just going to cover some general background that I don't typically repeat at the start of each hearing. But the goal of Public Works is to ensure safe, clean, and green infrastructure and public right-of-way. The Bureau of Urban Forestry's mission is to preserve and grow the urban forest while balancing the safety and needs of a growing and evolving city. And these are just some images of the type of work that our Bureau and our department does across the city, whether it's maintaining large mature trees or enforcement on the upper right, making sure that existing trees are protected during construction, planting replacement trees when necessary, and again, just ensuring also in the lower right corner that trees that are significant, that are on private property, but within 10 feet of the public right-of-way, that they are also protected and they receive the same protections as if there are trees in the public right-of-way because of the benefits they provide. 2016 in November, we had a ballot initiative that proposed the city assume maintenance responsibility for all the street trees in San Francisco. That passed in very compelling fashion. And so Public Works and or the city, we became responsible for maintaining all of the trees in the public right-of-way as of July 1st, 2017. We are still trying to close out our first full complete round of maintenance. We're at approximately 72% completed. We've set back a couple of years due to impacts from the pandemic, but this just shows on screen that our system of pruning and maintaining trees is based on where we have the largest trees, the largest volume quantity, and the trees that are in the greatest need. So we've kind of been working through the worst first, the first few years, and then transitioned to the other key maps that had fewer emergencies, fewer potential safety concerns. Some of what remains to be done is largely on the west side where there's fewer trees and or if they're just smaller. So we're getting there and excited about the potential closing out our first complete cycle of maintenance. And when Prop E passed, we refer to this as Street Tree SF, which is just the name of our public works tree maintenance program. This is some of our work in progress and some of the signs we put up just to inform the public what we're up to. And again, since the start of Street Tree SF, we're at approximately 72% of completion with our first cycle. We've pruned or maintained more than 85,000 street trees as of July 2024. And San Francisco has an urban forestry ordinance. It's Article 16 of the Public Works Code, and it establishes authorization and standards for addressing a wide range of issues regarding trees. So that was a little bit of general background. We have two cases tonight, and one of them is a rare scenario. We have the removal of one landmark tree located in the front property at 2694 McAllister Street. The tree is dead, and Article 16 requires a public hearing, except in the case of manifest danger and immediate necessity. Landmark trees and private property shall be removed only after the director's determination and issuance of a permit following a public hearing. In this particular case, we'll go through some of the details on the subject tree. The subject tree is a California buckeye tree. This is one of those trees where we always just assumed that this tree already was a landmark tree. An amazing example of a native species that's native to San Francisco is California buckeye. The Latin or scientific name is Aesculus californica, and just an outright stunning tree. It's a little bit out of the way. It's one of those streets that if you're used to going a certain way around the city, you could miss if you never hit some of the side streets. But once you saw it, you certainly wouldn't forget it. So this is an image of the tree when it was not dead and doing very, very well. And we just wanted to share some images of the tree over the last many years. It's a deciduous tree. So in the spring and early summer, it would look very green and lustrous and very vigorous and healthy. And by late summer, even midsummer, California buckeye trees, it's a deciduous species that drops its leaves for half the year. And of the deciduous trees, they drop their leaves even earlier than most. I've seen them where if you have supplemental irrigation, they will hold on to their green leaves longer. But if you see these in their native habitat in the hillsides in San Mateo County along 280, as you cut up and down there, you can see them right now if you were to drive. It's only mid-July, but most of their leaves are completely brown and starting to drop off. So brown leaves in the summer is not the end of the world at all. It's just typically how that species handles our drought cycles and our Mediterranean climate, where we have 6 months of no real precipitation. So the image on the far left is 2016, just showing it healthy during its green leafy state. 2018, hard to know when this photo is taken. Well, actually it's on the image. This was taken in, looks like September. So that's right, it would be losing its leaves by then. So the tree was not in decline in 2018. We're not trying to say that it was. But in 2023, last year and a half ago, we noticed that the tree did not put out new leaves at all and that it had died. We have staff who kind of looked into the history on Google Street View. So I just want to read some of the background of this amazing tree. August 1st, 2018, the Historic Preservation Commission recommended this particular California buckeye tree be recommended for landmark status. On July 26, 2022, the Board of Supervisors passed the ordinance sponsored by Supervisors Chan, Preston, and Safai, enacted on August 4th, 2022. The tree was nominated and designated as a landmark tree because of its rarity in San Francisco, its physical attributes, and environmental benefits. Beginning around May of 2023, so last spring, the department started to receive communications concerning the health and poor condition of the tree. The owner recently submitted the tree removal application for the landmark tree. In the yard space of the property, the Buckeye sits adjacent to a California bay laurel, Umbularia californica. One possible thought or theory is that the tree's demise, the Buckeye, could have been caused by a pathogen. So Phytophthora ramorum, a water mold. The pathogen can cause sudden oak death and can lead to mortality in some tree species. The bay laurel species is not killed by this infection, but are a vector in the pathogen to other tree species. And so it has been documented that this species can be impacted by sudden oak death. And we have a list of some of the species that can be impacted by sudden oak death, which is impacted by the same Phytophthora species, Phytophthora ramorum. So it's been found to cause cankers, leading to death of European beech, European sycamore, horse chestnut, which is very similar to California Buckeye, it's Aesculus genus, northern red oak, sessile oak, southern beech, southern red oak, turkey oak. Infected trees are attractive to opportunistic ambrosia and bark beetles, as well as secondary colonization by decay fungi. Another image of the subject tree. This image is from June 24th of 2024 this year, showing that the tree did not leaf out at all, and the branch tips are dry and brittle and dead. The bay tree we were just talking about, which can be a vector for the Phytophthora, is in the background. That bay tree is also a native tree to the peninsula, San Francisco, and the Bay Area. We have our inspector's notes for the tree. Again, we found that the tree has been dead for well over close to a year now. I don't believe it leafed out last spring. And throughout the year, it's just not put out any new buds, new growth, no signs that it's going to make a recovery. Here's another image taken recently, just showing it. It's hard sometimes to read the body language of a tree, but you can see there's actual bark sloughing off, separating at the cambium zone. So you have some of the bark is starting to slough off on a number of branches. So at this point, the tree has been dead for quite some time, and we strongly recommend that it be removed. Another close-up image, you can look at some of the bark beginning to separate and peel off the tree. This is just showing its placement within the yard. It's just behind the fence. And again, this tree is a landmark tree. One of the amazing things about landmark trees is that they require Board of Supervisors approval. So it's a tree that has the highest level of protection in San Francisco. This is some of the frass, decay, and beetle activity that we're seeing inside the bark. But again, we believe this is a secondary cause or secondary activity, not the primary activity that caused the death of the tree. Ooh, live video of insects. I was not prepared for that. In accordance with Article 16 of the Public Works Code, landmark trees and private property shall be removed only after the director's determination and issuance of a permit following a public hearing. So that's why we're having our public hearing today. And one of the thoughts from our inspector who's been handling the case was just suggesting that perhaps something could be done with the large wood of the tree. The tree is not in the public right of way, so I don't know. This is all new terrain for Public Works. I don't know what we'd be able to do in terms of providing assistance in reuse of the wood. That may be a city attorney question, but it's just a suggestion from our inspection staff that perhaps something could be done to reuse some of the wood. I believe that concludes most of our comments. It's an amazing tree. We're sad to see that it's died. We all thought it was landmarked. Getting it landmarked just the other year just felt like almost like an administrative thing. But it's just been a great tree, and not exactly sure what caused it to decline and die. But certainly our drought cycles and dense urban environment can cause trees to decline. With that, I don't believe I have any other information to provide at this time. One area of our code that is a bit of it's not a gray area, it's just lack of directive, is that landmark trees are so unique. They're not a street tree or significant tree where you, if it was a tree in the sidewalk, you'd get a permit to remove and replace it, and replacement is required. Our code is actually silent about replacement. It just talks about the need to get a permit to remove the tree, with the acknowledgement that any replacement tree certainly is not going to become a landmark tree overnight. So I don't believe, I've reviewed our code. I don't see any replacement requirement. So that's just something to share with the public as well, that we're just considering the removal of the landmark tree, and there's no particular replacement required. I think that'll conclude my comments. Thanks for your patience on this, but it's a great tree that deserves plenty of background. Thank you. And we should have an applicant potentially to just speak to the item.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Chris Buck, presenting on behalf of Public Works. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant here to speak? If the applicant is here, you'll have 3 minutes to make your presentation. Or is there an appellant here to speak on this matter? Item 210700.
The only
ahead.
one we would have would be the applicant, and it's
Okay.
possible that our inspector may not have required, and the applicant, the property owner, to attend. It could have felt like a very unfortunate but administrative procedure. So
Okay,
it's not, if the property owner is not here on this call this evening, what I would just ask my inspection staff to do would be to just reach out and make sure there wasn't something they wanted to submit in writing or
okay,
share as part of this.
okay, I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you so much.
Sure, but I would anticipate there may be some public comment.
Okay, so are there any members of the public who would wish to make comments on this item? If so, raise your hand. Cerise, do you see anyone? I exited full screen, so let me see.
I'm not seeing any hands. But
Okay.
I'm waiting to see if someone raises their hand.
Okay,
There is one.
okay.
Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead, caller.
Kurt, I see Kurt Avar with his hand raised. I think you can unmute yourself, Mr. Avar. We have one hand raised, Kurt Avar. You can unmute yourself. And you'll have 3 minutes. Asked to unmute.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I asked to unmute already. That
Sometimes
person
those,
was chatting with us in the chat, so
Okay.
I did advise them to go ahead and submit something in writing to our urban forestry at
Okay.
SFDPW,
Okay.
but I'm not
sometimes
sure.
those mute buttons can be elusive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll allow you, as Ms. Waiter said, you can respond in writing or when before we close out, if you want to come back and speak on this item, you'll be allowed 3 minutes. So I won't close out this case just yet. But are there any other comments from the public beside Mr. Kurt, who's unable to unmute himself temporarily? Okay. So if there are no other public comments on this item, then we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item, which is hearing order 210702. This order supersedes order 210701 to consider the removal of 6 street trees with replacement adjacent to 400 through 500 Castro Street. Our staff has approved the removal and the public protested. Public Works, you ready to make your presentation?
Yes, thank you. And I will see if it's easier to share this time. Probably not.
I
There we
can see.
go. Yeah. Okay, let's get it to the correct item. Resume slideshow. Well, there it is. Okay, thanks. I just want to confirm you can see the next item on Castro Street. Okay, perfect. So thank you. This is Public Works Order 210702, which superseded the one before it. There was some sort of administrative issue we had in creating that first one, so we had to create a second one. No one's missed another hearing. I just want to clarify that it was just a administrative thing. So this is to consider the removal of 6 street trees with replacement adjacent to the corresponding addresses on the 400 and 500 block of Castro Street by Public Works. Staff approved the removal and the public protested. And I also just wanted to recognize that I did hear both public comments at the start of the hearing on general public comment, and I made notes of that and appreciate that feedback. So the 6 trees are palm trees, king palm trees that were planted as part of the Castro Streetscape Improvement Project, which took place, hard to believe, but about 10 years ago.
Wow.
So I'm going to provide a lot of background about the trees in general, just because I want the public to feel heard and understand that we're very familiar with the trees and how they got planted, and that we're sensitive to any changes to the streetscape in the area. And so I'm going to show a few slides just in general. This one we still took off right off of our website, which highlighted this project. Public Works has a website where we highlight our large streetscape capital improvement projects. And certainly the Castro Streetscape Improvement Project is one that we're very proud of. There's a number of plaques along the sidewalks. There's a number of poets on there who I particularly like Allen Ginsberg and Oscar Wilde. So I've got my favorites. But I love that it's wasn't about street tree improvement, but there was sidewalk widening that occurred. And the start date was roughly 2012 and the finish date was roughly 2014. Some of the other elements were things like the colorful rainbow crosswalk, which is, I feel like, is pretty iconic now, and a number of other general benefits in that immediate area, and really is nestled into, it's around the corner from Jane Warner Plaza and Harvey Milk Transit Hub there. And it's just, I feel like it's the epicenter of the, this and City Lights are just amazing places in our city. So some of the highlights are here listed, just pulling this off of our website again, showing all the different improvements that were part of this project. And it included an evaluation of the existing trees and a proposal to plant replacement trees. So one of the things, and I was involved with this, is we assessed the health of the existing trees at the time. I remember there were some privet trees. It was a little bit of a hodgepodge of different trees. If they were in poor condition, we approved them for removal, and then the streetscape team determined that a number of impacts from new curbs, roadway, and sidewalk would impact root systems. So it was essentially a refresh and a start over with all of the trees that are there. The subject trees in tonight's hearing are spread throughout the 2-block area that is our area of focus, the 400 and 500 blocks of Castro Street. And this extends from Market past the Castro Theater to 18th Street, and then 18th Street to 19th Street, which is where this view on Google is taken, looking at 19th Street back towards Market Street. And you can see there are palm trees at the start of this block. And then we have ginkgos, which are deciduous trees, ginkgos that are mostly mid-block. And then we have another pattern of king palms at the end of the block. And then that pattern repeats itself on the next block. So in the hearing this evening, we're really talking about 6 specific king palms. And there's, I'll get into the reasons for removal, but again, what we're not talking about are the ginkgos. We're very proud of the overall streetscape here, and the ginkgos are a slow growing tree. This image is from Google 2021. There is a dead tree out there that we need to post for removal. Michael Petralis brought that to our attention, and so we still need to get that one posted for removal. But we will definitely be doing that. But in general, amazing to see Castro Street now with all the ginkgos doing really well. So prior to this winter, our main challenges with the king palms is that a few of them died. I'm just using a couple of examples as like little case histories. It took us a while to try to get a replacement palm planted and replaced in front of the bagel place, and it's been tough to get it to become established. So this is how it started, with 3 healthy palms, and the middle palm and then the palm on the far left both died, and we had to plant replacement palms. One thing we learned about this species is that they are very finicky when it comes to replacement and getting them established. So one of the delays in planting replacements over the years has been that we want to do it when the average temperature is over a certain point, because the cooler and colder it is, the less well it establishes. This is something we learned. So sometimes we would be in touch with the Castro CBD and just say, we're aware of the situation, but we need to wait for the temperatures to warm up. So that was kind of our main challenge with the king palms, is that sometimes the trees died. We could never figure out why that was. We would plant replacements. Here's another image in front of Walgreens, the middle palm that died. We couldn't figure out why. And another little case example in general was right here, probably the most important couple of palms, the one on the far right. right beneath the Castro sign. This one died pretty early on after planting, and this is it in happier times, and then this is after it got replaced. Here it is. Here's the second one. So just showing that we have been having some challenges with some of the king palms, not all of them, but these two king palms, again, in front of both of these properties, examples of king palms where they just seem to die. We couldn't quite figure it out, but we eventually plant replacements. That's been our general approach the last several years. One thing that occurred this winter is during the storms in early February, a palm tree pictured here failed, and it hit someone who was waiting for a bus. We have pending litigation, so there's a limit to the details that we'll get into, but we had to respond to that incident. The palm on the right was the one that failed and fell down. And then in addition to that, we received a service request that same evening, and the king palm on the left was leaning very, very strongly. It was in the act of falling over itself. So we lost both of these palm trees in the same evening. The one on the right fell completely down, struck a pedestrian, and caused very serious injuries. And the one on the left, we were able to get to in time and remove it before it fell completely over. And so this was a different issue than what we had been facing earlier. What we did over the next few weeks and months is we visited the site and checked the palm trees and physically checked to see if we could move any of these by hand. And we also waited for the winter rains to dry out so that we could know, even with soils no longer saturated, can you move these large palms by hand? You certainly shouldn't be able to move them. And we found that of the palms that are there on the block, on both blocks, 6 palms we can absolutely move by hand, and they're no longer sustainable. They've lost too much of their root crown. And so these are the 6 palm trees that we now seek to remove. We believe it may be something called pink rot, which is can be slightly pinkish in color. We don't have any good photos of that, but we can say that you literally could move this tree pushing it at shoulder height, and that's not something you should be able to do with a palm tree of this size. And so one of these is at adjacent to 420 Castro Street. So we number the trees with a flow of traffic on that side of the block. So tree 1 here is to the right as you face the property. And the next one is the very next one, tree 2 at Castro Street, 420 Castro Street. So it's the 2 palms in front of 420 Castro. Again, you can see at the base of this trunk, this one looks very obvious. The trees that failed did not look like there was anything wrong with them. They didn't have decay that was easily visibly present. These 2 do. You can see where they're girdled and missing a lower part of the trunk. The next location is 426 Castro, where again, urban forestry inspector and I, Marcus Dotson, he and I visited the trees just to evaluate them, take photos, see if we could move them. And again, these 3 trees in a row, we were able to move by hand very easily. The next location is 495 Castro Street. Same situation, we can move the palm by hand, and it has a girdling of the lower trunk. So that's 4 so far. The 5th tree is in front of 587 Castro Street. Again, this one looks a little bit more normal in quotes, meaning it doesn't have as much of a decay or visible girdling at the base of the trunk. But this too, we were able to move quite easily by hand. And then the sixth of the 6 palms is adjacent to 590 Castro Street. And again, we were able to push this by hand, which again, we should not be able to do. I don't know I will look up if I have the number of palm trees that we could not budge. Those we're not proposing to remove. We will need to keep a close eye on them, especially in the winter months, just to see if their condition changes. It's a new situation that we're reacting to as of February this year. But again, what led us to seek the removal of these 6 was in response to a very serious injury to a pedestrian, and getting out there to understand why did that palm fail and why was the second one halfway over. And we believe it's caused by pink rot, and we don't have many king palms in San Francisco. I think one of the more common palms that have a look and feel of this type of tree is a queen palm, but literally it sounds kind of funny. But there was feedback from the community that it seemed like too much of a joke or caricature, like, oh, queen palms on Castro. There was a desire to have something to be a little different, and those king palms are really beautiful. They are different, and that was the idea, was to have kind of an accent palm that brought something a little different to these 2 blocks, this streetscape, because it's such a incredibly important block and blocks in our history. So that was the desire, and there definitely was a committee that reviewed the proposed species. So I've been in touch with our landscape architects to understand, and we do need to reach out to the community to understand, what do we want to replace these with? And so that's a decision that Public Works has not yet made, because we need to talk to the community about that. There was quite a process to establish the streetscape layout of ginkgos and king palms, and we certainly don't want to come in and in disrespect all the work that people have put into that. So I've jotted down those key constituencies, and I think what we'll need to do is reach out to those same groups and restart the conversation about replacement species. That was one reason why we didn't jump out right away and start posting these trees for removals. There was a thought of, well, let's try to figure all that out. So when you put the notices up on the trees, we could say they'll be removed and replaced with X species. But ultimately, we need to have those conversations before we can settle on the species. That said, we still needed to move forward with these 6 palms to address public safety. So that's a recap of where we are. I know Michael had reached out and was looking for some additional information, which I wasn't able to provide, but I'm hoping that tonight we can start on better footing and talk about the communication and the outreach moving forward. That pretty much wraps up our presentation. And just to repeat, we haven't settled on replacement species because we know we absolutely need the community's engagement on that. So with that, I'll conclude our staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris Buck from Public Works. We appreciate your presentation. Are there any appellants here who would wish to speak regarding this case? And then we'll come back to the other one. I know that the gentleman who wasn't able to speak on the first item wants to speak. So are there any public comments about this item? Okay. I see Mr. Nolte. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Nolte.
Good evening. Yes,
Good evening.
again, this is very interesting that, a plan that was put in place 10 years ago and then the trees are failing and now I'm hearing that they've been failing for quite a while on that street because I'm not walking down it all the time. But the issue I have is that, one, you're talking about 6 being replaced. Is there even a budget to replace those 6? I mean, because that has been a major issue with any replacement. You don't have a budget really, except for your your fund that you have to actually replace trees. And so you can be asking the community to replace these. I mean, who's going to replace these 6 trees or more? Because it seems to be something that's happening to multiple of these trees. And since I don't know the exact number, and you didn't want to bring it up, how many palm trees are on these 2 blocks? So what's stopping those other trees at some point also having this pink rot or something else that's happening at the bottom of the tree, which since you say you do a stress test on it, happening again. So we're only right now looking at 6, and you talked about more trees that were removed over the past 10 years. So I don't know the total. I mean, the community should hear all these numbers. And so, I don't feel comfortable really talking about removal today when I don't hear the whole picture of the 2 blocks on the streetscape project. How many are palm trees? And how many can also be affected later down the road with this rot. And also, how are you going to be the community will be doing with all the trees because they chose two trees to be placed in this streetscape. So I think that should be part of the conversation, and also maybe a reason. I'm not saying you stop for the removal, but I question: is there funds for the to replace? And then also, what would be your deadline to do the community outreach and come up with a final decision? Because normally after removal, it's but the 6 months. There's there's a rule here how fast you have to plant a tree. So now you think going to do community outreach that would also affect the time to replace. So there's a couple of moving parts here, which I'm very concerned about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte, for your comments. I think we'll take your comments into consideration. I heard you say specifically 2 things. One, you were questioning whether or not the department has a budget for these tree replacements. And then secondly, what is the timeline? What would be the timeline for the tree replacement and the timeline for some type of community outreach that would allow the members of the community stakeholders to have input as to the type of trees or whatever that are going in. So I would ask you to allow us, meaning our department and Chris Buck here from our Bureau of Urban Forestry, to respond to you by the end of the week, maybe. Is that reasonable, Chris? With the timeline? Okay. Via email, Mr. Nolte, and I know we have your contact details, so we can provide that for you. There was another gentleman that had his hand up and wanted to speak. Mr. Petrellis?
Hi, let me get to my stopwatch and then I'll get going for my 3 minutes.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm starting. Hi, this is Michael Petrellis again. First of all, I am very much in favor of quickly removing the 6 trees because of safety concerns. The fact that a person has been seriously injured and there is litigation, that all argues in favor of quickly removing these 6 trees so that there isn't a risk posed to the public. The fact that you don't have a replacement tree decision made should not hinder the safety concerns. Next, Please do not try and put any trees in on Castro Street between Twin Peaks and the coffee company. You have tried over the years. It is a bad location for any tree because you have a lot of foot traffic passing by, and in the evenings you have a lot of drunk and high people on drugs that are abusing these trees. They knock into them, they try and pull them down. I've seen this happen, okay? So please, no more trees in that location. It is very difficult in that part of the sidewalk for pedestrian safety to begin with. Putting trees there, no. Regarding these palms, you haven't said one word about why they are good. You've talked about how many you've had to remove. You've got litigation because of serious injury. You know, I was one of the people who called in a removal request for the tree that was in front of Walgreens. So I'm very much aware of how these trees, these palms fail. FAIL. They are not made to survive on Castro Street. I am asking that it be considered to plant more ginkgos. They do survive, and some of them even thrive on the 500 block of Castro Street. Put aside concerns about monoculture. We need more trees, even if they are all of the same variety. And I think that the fact that you use
30
the term
seconds.
finicky palms, finicky trees are not suitable for these two blocks, where you also have protests and celebrations, a lot of car traffic, foot traffic. That argues for stopping this craziness of trying to get these palms to survive on Castro. They do not survive. And finally, yes, more outreach to wider swath of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petrellis. We appreciate your comments. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Hello.
Once you've spoken, you can't speak again on this
No.
item.
Hello, my name is Michael Nolte. I haven't spoken.
Oh,
uh,
I'm sorry. I thought you did on this item. Okay, sorry.
No. First of all, there is the Castro Street CBD. Their mandate, most mandates of any community benefit district is to deal with beautification of their neighborhood that they call within their district boundaries. So I would respectfully request that a budget be created for replacement of these trees and the other trees that are palm trees, that a budget be created that DPW can submit to the CBD, seeing if they can do some fundraising and or can assist in expediting the replacement of the trees with a to be determined species, with the emphasis that it probably should not be the palm trees because they are hazardous to the neighborhood and have caused too many problems and are not and really, because it's really funny that we're having a public meeting and there's not many stakeholders at this meeting, but I feel the necessary to make some decisions here, or at least help assist in the decision making. That you know, a tree has to be sustainable and also has to be protected during the 3 years that it's planted. And obviously those trees were able to stay there for 3 years, but they obviously are not capable of staying there longer than they probably they should have been there. They should have been able to sustain there for probably 25 or more, I would assume. So we can't keep on putting money into trees that are not sustainable into the neighborhoods, and in this case, the Castro. So I think, we know a tree that does, maintain well, and that should be one of the recommended, species to be used. We don't need to have a bunch of different species, in those couple blocks of the Castro. And, with the recommendation, and maybe the other trees that are palm trees be removed also, so we don't, look, so that the area looks more, like it's something that's going on there.
30 seconds.
So I think some recommendations should be also given. It's too bad people are not on this Zoom call that could have been giving the proper input. And it's clearly a mistake of how people are not in touch with what goes on in the city government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Are there any other comments from members of the public? Okay. Last chance, public comments for anyone who may have come late or didn't get a chance to speak yet on this item. Okay, before we close out, I just want to allow, there's a gentleman who was unable to unmute his phone for hearing order 210700. That's for the location at 2694 McAllister Street. Removal of one landmark tree.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Great. Sorry about that. That was a technical issue on my side. My comment may be a moot point here, but maybe there's some learnings. You are the experts, so I will leave the cause of the degradation of the tree to you. But one thing I wanted to add was a few years ago, the tenants began having a makeshift fire pit outside by the trunk, low to the ground. And I had commented with them on a few occasions that I didn't know if this, I did some research. I don't really know if it is accurate, but there was I was worried there was a cooking of the roots and that could really damage the tree. And I commented on it before it started to look sick. And I don't believe it was coincidence that over a couple of years, the tree died. And it would, if that is the case, it was completely preventable. And I've lived here 14 years across the street, and that tree has been such a part of our neighborhood. And, maybe if that is true and that is something that may have happened, maybe it's a learning, there's some education there that we could try and avoid, because the makeshift fire pits, I could see it, I could see it coming, and then just watched it for a couple of years. And again, I brought it up a couple of times. We wrote to the city, and my wife, I'm not sure if she wrote to the urban forester, but we did write in to voice our concern. So it's just sad. And again, it's a moot point, but maybe there's a takeaway there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ibarra, for sharing that. We appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Okay. Any last public comments on that for anyone who has not spoken or came late and didn't have a chance to speak? So if there are no more public comments, I just would like to thank our Public Works staff, Mr. Chris Buck from our Bureau of Urban Forestry, and also Ms. Cerise Waiters, our clerk for this evening, and for all of you who took the time out of your evening to show up and to share your thoughts. And we really appreciate it. So take care. I'll be making my recommendations to our director, and then the director will have the final say about these items this evening. And then we'll be following up, Chris and I, on the questions that Mr. I forget the gentleman. It wasn't John Nolte, it was the other gentleman. Petralis? I think it was Mr. Petralis's comments. But thank you all and have a wonderful evening. And I'm closing this hearing. This hearing is now closed. Thank you.